Okay, so whenever I left off on basically setting up textures and fun stuff like that as far as bump mapping. I was trying to think of what the word was. So if you notice now my scene is like super bright. The reason for that is I actually have a spotlight in here, and you don't have to make it this big. I only make it this big so this way it's easy to access, it's easy to manipulate. And you see a little sun icon in here. Now this is actually ambient light. Mental ray rendering, I don't remember what the values need to be, but for Arnold rendering, which is the equivalency of, because this well was replaced in either 2017 or 2018, one of those versions, you have to make your lights super bright. So the intensity of this actually needs to be closer to 1,000. I know I just hit 10,000, but we're going to see what it looks like. So as you can see, it's actually really dark. If we go and click on my spotlight, I'm just going to change this value to 10,000. I'm going to make it 10 times brighter. And we render this. Yeah, that looks decent. I'm actually kind of happy with that. The reason why this is so light, because I have it set to use all lighting, I actually want to go back to use default light so I'm not getting blinded here. If we render this in either what you're going to be using Mental Ray, I'm using Arnold, you're going to see that it's going to give you a really high level of detail. It actually looks really pretty. But that's not quite the effect we're going after because our ground is not textured yet. So because in the tutorial on FSO, he showed you to use paint effects, I'm going to show you how to use paint effects, as well. I'm just not going to get as in depth as he did. I'm just going to paint the ground real quickly. I will, however, show you what to use XGen. So we have XGen over here. I have this tab. You can go ahead and get it loaded. I also have it over here. It's basically something that you will have to load up, more than likely. But I'm just going to click on my tab. I'm going to create a new description. And so I'm going to want to use splines. You can use it for short hair, fur, grass, etc. But I'm going to show you exactly how I did my grass. We'll hit create. Now over here, let me see, here we go. You have density. Density is basically just how much grass it's going to actually apply to your scene. One thing to keep in mind, if you click over here on Preview Output under Renderer, you want to make sure this is set to Arnold Render. If it's not, it will never show up. So under Primitives, I want to make sure the length is going to be long enough. I'm still not seeing anything. So if you're wondering, no, your eyes do not deceive you, I am legitimately not seeing anything on my computer screen. But it's there. So this doesn't really look particularly special. As what we need to do is we need to set everything up so it looks proper. Normally, whenever you're working with this, you'd actually be able to see what exactly you are working with. I've got a little bit of experience, so I already know that I need to add a taper right about there. I'm going to taper that up. We don't want to do a tilt U and a tilt V, just a little bit, not a whole lot. And then I want a bend U and a bend V. I'm going to go ahead and save this scene, and then whenever I hit render, we're going to get a slightly better result. Alright, so that's actually not looking half bad. So all this is going the same direction. It's got a bit much of a bend, but if you want something that looks like, it's just been sitting for a while, is what you can do is you can actually increase the length. So I'm going to increase this to about 2.5. And then the next thing I want to do is increase the density to, let's see, that's going to be about there. So I'm going to say 3.25. So now, if I were to render just this area, I did not mean to click that button. No, that's okay. We'll just see what it looks like. It renders quickly anyways. So now that's starting to look more proper. If you have longer grass, you do not have to worry about, as high of a density. If you have shorter grass, you're going to need a higher density to kind of help cover that. So now that we have the baseline grass set, if you want to mix and match, which is what I'm getting ready to show you how to do, I'm going to set this to 1.5. That's going to really lower the count as far as what the grass goes. So let's go into paint effects. I'm going to go ahead and click on my grass if I can ever find it. And I'm actually going to increase this size just a little bit. Add some grass there, add some grass there, add some grass there. It's probably a little large, and you can always scale this down, which is probably what I'll end up doing. But I'm just going to throw some grass in here real quick. Just some random grass, nothing too special. Just kind of throw it around. Okay, there we go. So we got all of our grass shapes. What we want to do now is we're going to come in here on under the clumps. Make sure they're all selected. There we go. And we're just going to go ahead and create poly mesh out of all these. And I'm going to click on my scale tool. I'm just going to scale these down. About like that. So now when we render our scene, I'm going to try and get this angle right here. When we render our scene, this is about what you'll have. And you can always come in here into the middle of it and you can go ahead and set this up, but you can already start to see how much detail this scene has, and it really doesn't look half bad. So that's just some of the things you can do with XGen and Paint Effects. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. If you're using XGen to create models, polygonal models out of, it can be kind of a pain, but overall I'm not going to say it's too terribly bad. We got this set up, so let's go ahead and just kind of like throw some grass around here real quickly. I'm just going to kind of like scatter this around, somewhere like this. We'll create a little path here since we know we have a little fence object. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is increase the brush size just a little bit. Now I'm just going to like quickly throw this down here. This is one of the nice things about having a computer that has a really good graphics card, is I can push it real hard and heavy, and it's like, I got this. So it's actually kind of nice. I'm going to go ahead and click the render button, and we'll see what it looks like now. Diet Cola. Now, if you remember what the FSO page said, it doesn't show up, and the reason because of that, because I forgot to set it as a polygonal mesh. So let's do that real quick. I'm just going to scroll down here. I'm going to click here. I'm going to just shift select. And we're going to create a poly object out of all of this. And so once that has done doing its thing, which should be about now, we'll click on render and we'll see what this scene looks like. So that doesn't look half bad. I mean, I'm not going to go all out on this and show you every little detail of what I did, because that would take a long time. I'm just basically giving you different ideas and different concepts of what you can do. The last thing I'm going to show you how to do is we're going to work on the ground base. So right now we have this. And the nice thing about the ground base, if you look at the UV editor, it's already set. So we don't have to do anything extraordinary with that. It's actually going to be really easy to set this up. I'm going to just come in here and I'm going to, let's see, I'm just going to type in dirt texture if I can type, which apparently I cannot. So find a texture of something, and you don't want something that's real close up. You want something that's kind of far out like this, but you're also going to want something that's a little higher resolution. Here we go, assorted dirt texture. This one should work. It's a little close up, but we'll make it work. Let me just save image and go into desktop. We're going to go down here to Tut folder, which is where I have all my stuff saved. And then we'll go here to Maya. So with this selected, we're going to go ahead and click on rendering. And dirt doesn't have any shininess to it. Unless it's like in atmosphere, then it's going to have a real bright shininess to it. But we have an atmosphere on Earth, so we're not worried about that. We're going to click on Rendering2, color. Y'all should remember this from the previous tutorial. Click on File, and then we need to go to the folder that you're doing this under. And then finally we're going to look for dirt texture. We'll open that up. So this obviously does not look right. That is okay. If you click on, let me move this out of the way. I'm going to just click on there. There we go. So what's going on is it's taking your entire plane and it's actually just kind of doing whatever. Now there's several ways you can do this. I'm going to show you the MS Paint way and I'll show you the Photoshop way. MS Paint way is going to be where you go ahead and open. Meh. Tut folder, free dirt. Everybody likes free dirt. So I'm just going to zoom out. I'm going to click on the select, Control A, Control C, and I actually need to make this way larger. I'm going to show you how to create a seamless texture. I say seamless, it's quote-unquote seamless. You'll see exactly what I'm talking about here in a second. I'm going to hit Control V. I'm going to... Okay, there we go. Oh, you bastard. Control V. Right click. We're going to rotate horizontal. And then I'm just going to move it over here. I'm not going to spend too much time. I'm just going to kind of get it close. So then I'm going to Control C, Control V, and then we're going to flip it vertical. And I'll show you exactly what this does here in just a second. Rotate vertical, not horizontal. You won't see anything. Vertical, there we go. You know, it would really help if I didn't have this as such a large image. So then I'm going to zoom out one more time. Oh yeah, Paint's mad at me. So I'm going to move this in. I'm just going to cut that little sliver. Then I'm going to come down here. That can go up there. There we go. This is actually a really large file, so that's why it's taking so long, because this is 7768 by 5168. As you can see, now that we have saved that, it looks a little bit better. It's still way too large, but the purpose of me doing that is when we go into... Oh, here we go. When we go into Lambert, we go into Color, and we go down to... What is it? Place the 2D texture. We're going to want to repeat these UVs. 8 by 8. 8. There we go. And so as you can see now, that's looking a little bit better. Still not quite where we want it, so we can go ahead and change this to... Let's go and just double this. There we go. And so now whenever you render this, you're going to see that it does look significantly better than what it did. It's not rendering. I mean, it is a pretty large image texture, so I'm not all that surprised. Okay, it's rendering, it's just, it's still loading. I mean, it is a pretty hardcore, large, intensive file size. I don't know if my screen stops right here, but on my end it does. So now that does look a lot better already. Just immediately it looks just immensely better. So the next thing I'm going to show you how to do real quick is going to be an HDR map. There we go. So an HDR map is going to be the next thing I'm going to show you. In Maya for Mental Ray, I believe it's going to be in the same area. I'll have to look on my end to verify that. So if this was mental ray, you're going to click on mental ray right here, and you're going to look down here where it says environment. I don't know exactly where that's at. I cannot remember. So we'll click on the environment tab, and we're just going to go ahead and create a background, and we're going to do a sky shader. There we go. So once the sky shader is imported, you're going to want to find an HDR map. So if we just Google free HDR sunny, you can type in whatever you want, free HDR map. If we find one of, like, you're going to find ones like this. These are perfect. Make sure you cite the source. The more whiteness you have, the brighter it's going to be. The darker it is, you can figure it out. It's going to be dark. So something like this, if you want it looking like it's inside of a long, endless room, I'm sure the instructor is going to say something about that, but you can do it. You're not really limited to HDR maps. It's really what's in your imagination that you choose to do. So I'm just going to choose this one. This is a small file. I'm just going to save the image as. Keep in mind, some of these will save as actual HDR maps. I'm just going to do this one as a preview, just so I can show you what happens. So we're going to click on File. It's the same thing as before. Click on File 5. You can do it. So we need, that's not it, HDR, here we go. Open. So you'll notice whenever we open this is going to be kind of blurry because this is a low resolution texture file. This is basically the same thing I did for my scene. Whenever you render this, you want to try and make sure you don't get the ground in there. If you get the ground, it's going to look weird. But we'll go ahead and just render it like this, so this way I need to do something first. That's probably still going to be too bright, but we will see. So this is basically what I did. When I used my HDR map, it was 10,000 by 7,000. It was a little excessive. Okay, it was very excessive. But that's how it was so clean, so clear, and so crisp, is because I use that size. So as you can see, that actually gives it a really nice look. We still have a checker pattern, or like these little squares on the dirt texture. To get rid of that is what we need to do. Let me go into Photoshop real quick, and I'm going to Tut folder. I'm actually going to bring the dirt into Photoshop. I'm going to show you how you can kind of get rid of that. So what's going on is it's looking at this darker area and it's looking at these lighter areas, and that's basically what's creating our, basically that's what's creating our Control C. It's what's creating the whole effect of the darkness. So what we need to do is we actually need to do an offset. So I'm going to do that real quick. Okay, so I need to find my offset, and I do not remember. Wait, is that? Yeah, okay, good. So when you go to Layer, Offset, Offset. No, it's not under Layer. It's some. I'm trying to remember where this was. You would think I'd remember, but I really don't. That is not what I wanted. Let me see. Workspace. Range. View. Meh. On screen. I know it's somewhere real simple, just something I wouldn't even. There. See, this is the downside whenever you start getting used to just using hotkeys. When you have to actually go back and try to find it, it's like really hard to do. Because I know it's somewhere simple. Okay. Photoshop offset. Filter other offset. Alright. That's what it was. So we'll just make sure everything's selected. Filter other. Oh, why? Apparently it's not happy with me. You know, it would probably help if my layer was actually selected. I bet that's what was going on the entire time. Because now if I hit Control F, there we go. Okay, so that makes me happy. Control V. Make sure this is selected. I'm going to put this right here, Control V. I'm going to put another one right here. Then I'm going to click on my eraser tool. And I'm going to make that just a little bit larger. You'll see what I'm doing here in just a second. Opacity, I usually keep this around 14%. There we go. And this way, whenever... I don't want to merge those yet. Let me go and click on this one. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of like come through here and just start erasing. Because the opacity is set real low, it will actually kind of like smooth everything out. So that's all I'm doing is I'm just kind of like coming through. I'm clicking very fast and then just trying to smooth everything out so it kind of blends. Okay, that one's done. So I'm going to click on this one now. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to kind of come here, through here, and knock this out real fast. Now, if you wanted to make a larger texture map, you could. So I'm going to show you a few different things you can do as far as that goes. I'm going to go ahead and merge those two together. I'm going to duplicate the layer, and then what I'm going to do is merge these two together. I'm going to make sure this one's selected, Control F. I'm actually going to set this back to its default setting. Okay, so what I want to do now is Control V. I know we still have that little white sliver there. I'm honestly not too worried about that. I'm more worried about getting rid of the checker pattern. So now is what we can do is we can go ahead and merge those layers together. I'm going to turn that one off real quick. With this one selected, let's go ahead and we're going to do a transform on it. I'm going to hold down Shift as I drag this down, and what we want to do now is press Enter, and we're going to start duplicating this layer. So then all we have to do is just click on the Move tool and just start moving these around. Let's go ahead and duplicate both of those. And you will see what I'm getting ready to do here in just a second. Because right now this basically is what it looks like inside of Maya. Or what it will look like inside of Maya. So I know we have these white crosses. I don't know if you can see it on your screen. I can definitely see it on mine. But we would just basically keep going through all of that. And you just keep going through all that and basically just setting it up to do whatever. So basically I would take these little images like this. I wouldn't want to get it where it's outside of the bounds, but I would want to select them and set them all to different heights and things like that. It's like this section goes out of bounds and that section goes out of bounds. And basically all I would do is just keep throwing them around all over the place. and that's how you'd get rid of that checker pattern. This would give it the randomness you need, and by being that small, you would still be able to zoom in because it would keep most of its data. So if I were to zoom in on this, the camera can zoom in pretty far. Right up there is where you start getting pixelated. The camera will never be zoomed in this far. This is probably the closest it will be, and as you can see, it still has the detail that you'd be looking for. So that's how you create a high resolution map inside of that's how you create a high resolution map inside of Photoshop. So back into Maya. Let's see, the last thing I was wanting to show you was, actually no, I think that was it. Oh, camera placement. That's what it was. So you see that I have this camera inside the scene. Under rendering, it's going to be this icon. I think in Maya 2016 it has a plus, and then it actually has like the camera shape to it and everything. So the purpose of me showing you this, if you want to set up an animation inside your scene, is what I would recommend is the first thing to do is get this to 0. Both of these values to 0. So right here, you're going to press S on the keyboard. Let me move the scene so this way it's selected in the scene. So we'll press S on the keyboard. Now you'll notice that a little red line pops up right there. This red line will set the camera to the position of where it needs to be. So let's say if you go into Panels, Camera 1, and you're like, okay, let me move this here. Oh man, I wanted to keep that camera there because I meant to be in perspective. Well, don't worry about that. If you come here to this, first of all, if you're right here, this will not work. You can hit delete all you want. That red sliver is still going to be there. So make sure you're on the red sliver. Come up here to delete, and as you can see, by deleting that, it'll move the camera back to the position. If you do want to create an animation, the general rule of thumb is every 30 frames equals 1 second. In this case, you can see down here it's 24 FPS, which means every 24 frames is 1 second. So let's say you want the camera to go from where it's at right now to over here, and you want that to last, I don't know, you want it to last 6 seconds. So that's pretty close to where I'm going to be, but let's go ahead and bring up calculator. You have 24 times 6, so you have 144 frames that you're going to be required to have. So what we need to do is we need to set this. You can also drag this out to 144, or you can just type it in right here. If you've already moved the camera and you realized that you need more frames, so actually here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to set this to 200. Set. There we go. So if you have moved the camera and you realize that I actually need to be right here for the final frame, is what you can do is you can go off to the last frame that was highlighted, hold down the middle mouse button, and drag it to 144, or to whatever frame you need. Press S on the keyboard to set that keyframe, and then you're done. I'm going to go ahead and delete that one. So as you can see now, it's at frame 144. So real quickly, this right here will go to the start of the playback. This will go to the last frame of your time slider. This icon right here will go to the previous set points where your keyframes are selected. This is to play forward. This is to play backwards. Big red X means stop. Pretty simple. The one without the big orange line in it, this is to do 1 frame increments. If you want to try to add different angles, simply whenever you're on your object, you can simply rotate out. You can rotate it down. You can translate it, move it. So now when it rotates around, it actually kind of like zooms around the picnic table. If you want, you can give it a little bit more transformations, things like that. So when it does go around, it actually goes around smoothly. Let me think. What else is there? Oh, extra transforms. So under camera 1, under the camera shape, you have film gate user. If you're not sure what's actually being rendered inside, is what you can do is you can come up here to view. Is it view? Yes, it is view. Come down here to camera settings, and then you're going to come down here to resolution gate. So during your rendering, if you're going to do a batch render, this is what your camera will be viewing. So just make sure it's within this gray box, and this is exactly what the camera will see during each frame. So right here we have a slight cutoff. And without the resolution gate, if we come back down here to view, camera settings, no gate, so we would see inside of Maya that, okay, this would get rendered. However, when we actually come up here to render it, you'll see that that top part is actually cut off. Still rendering. Almost done. Any day now. Alright, there we go. So as you can see right here, this section is actually cut off, whereas right out here, it's viewable. So that's something to keep in mind as far as your resolution gate. It can really be a big lifesaver if there's certain elements in a scene that you want to make sure are actually in there. Use your resolution gate. Lastly, when you go up here to save image, I'm going to show you this real quickly. I'm going to do, inside the TUT folder, I'm going to say TUT example, and we're going to save. Oh, wait. Because more than likely, if you're running with something like this, you may run into this problem, and I'm going to show you exactly what the problem is. So we're going to come in here, and under TUT example, this is the image I just saved. So this does not match this. If you run into this problem, the most common fix for this, when you go to save image, click on this little box, make sure color managed image is selected instead of raw image. So when you actually save the image, we'll go to save image now, and we'll do TUT example. We will save it. We will bring it back up. As you can see now, these two match. So those are some common issues that you might run into. Other than that, if you run in, actually other common issues I'm going to save for the next video. So this way, if y'all run into these,